Around 360 BCE, Plato described a powerful civilization swallowed by the sea in a single day and night, 9,000 years before his own time. For centuries, the verdict was simple: allegory, nothing more. But scientists have reopened the case. Sonar scans off the Azores now reveal geometric formations on the ocean floor that no one can fully explain. Sediment cores are being tested with dating protocols once reserved for confirmed archaeological sites. What is emerging from the data is forcing a question most scholars thought was already settled: whether Plato's account encodes a real catastrophe that history simply forgot. Plato's account of Atlantis stands as the only direct source for the legend, a puzzle built from precise language, numbers, and imagery. In the pages of Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BCE, he sets the scene. A vast island greater than Libya and Asia together, lying beyond the pillars of Heracles. The Greek phrase, meson Elibius kai Asias, survives in several medieval manuscripts, but not without dispute. In some copies, a subtle shift in accent changes the meaning, either greater than both or greater than either. That single word has shaped centuries of speculation about the true scale of Atlantis. Plato's narrative is meticulous in its details. He describes the capital as a marvel of engineering, a citadel at the center, encircled by alternating rings of land and water, 3, possibly 4, depending on which manuscript is read. The outermost ring is said to be 5 stodes wide, about 900 meters, though some versions record 4. The city's harbors could moor 1,200 ships, with a network of canals connecting the rings to the sea. The plain surrounding the city was said to stretch for 3,000 stods, or roughly 550 kilometers, a figure that strains belief and has fueled endless debate about whether Plato intended metaphor or measurement. Central to the chronology is the line, for 9,000 years the Atlanteans held dominion before the Great Flood. The Greek numeral for 9,000 appears clearly in the Codex Vaticanus, but later copies sometimes truncate it to 900, a difference that collapses or expands the timeline by millennia. Modern translators like Jowett and Hackett preserve the 9,000-year span, reinforcing the sense of a lost world reaching back to the edge of prehistory. Even the phrase "beyond the pillars of Heracles" is contested. Some manuscripts say beyond, others before, opening the possibility that Plato's Atlantis lay not in the Atlantic, but somewhere closer to home. These textual ambiguities are not just scholarly minutiae, they are the cracks through which entire theories have grown. Every claim about Atlantis' location, age, and size must wrestle with these original lines, preserved in ink and parchment, their meaning debated for over 2,000 years. Interest in Atlantis once lived in the margins of philosophy and myth. But in 1882, Ignatius Donnelly published a book that changed everything. Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, landed with the force of a manifesto, arguing that Plato's tale described a real advanced civilization lost to the Atlantic. Donnelly's book became a sensation, its pages filled with flood legends, geological puzzles, and the suggestion that Atlantis seeded the world's earliest cultures. Suddenly, the search for Atlantis was no longer the province of poets and dreamers. It became a quest for lost history, and Donnelly was its unlikely champion. He drew on everything from ancient maps to Native American myths, weaving a narrative that made Atlantis seem plausible, even probable. The book's reach extended far beyond scholarly circles. It inspired explorers, fueled newspaper headlines, and convinced a generation that the ocean might conceal the ruins of a forgotten empire. Expeditions launched for the Azores and the Canaries, with scientists and amateurs alike scouring the seafloor for evidence. Yet for all the excitement, hard proof remained elusive. By the mid-20th century, the line between investigation and imagination had blurred. Theories multiplied, but so did skepticism. In 1974, a UNESCO symposium on ancient seafaring drew a line in the sand, calling for rigorous standards before accepting claims of lost civilizations. Archaeologists demanded stratigraphic context, radiometric dating, and peer-reviewed publication. The era of grand conjecture gave way to a new insistence on verifiable evidence. Donnelly's legacy, once a cultural wildfire, now cast a long shadow, both a warning and a challenge to those who would search for Atlantis. Today, every sonar ping and core sample is measured against these standards. The hunt for Atlantis has become a test case for how myth, science, and public imagination collide. The story's power endures, but the rules of the search have changed. What began as allegory, then transformed into expedition, now stands at the intersection of legend and laboratory, waiting for the next piece of evidence to tip the scales. In the deep Atlantic waters near the Azores, a new chapter began with a few lines of digital code and a sonar array sweeping the seafloor. Portuguese engineer David Lee Fernandes released a set of preliminary findings, raw, unfiltered data from multi-beam sonar scans that seemed to reveal something unexpected. At a depth of nearly 1,200 meters, the sonar mapped a series of concentric shapes, rings within rings, etched into the basaltic plain, each spanning up to 250 meters across. The geometry struck a chord with those who knew Plato's account by heart. But the data came with warnings. The EMODnet bathymetry used for these images resolves at 100 meters, enough to sketch broad outlines, but not enough to distinguish between volcanic terraces and anything built by human hands. Fernandes, cautious but intrigued, shared a video feed from an autonomous underwater vehicle. The footage showed a smooth, fissured surface, pitted and cracked, yet lacking the clear lines or tool marks that would settle the debate. Still, the regularity of the forms, nearly circular with edges more uniform than the surrounding terrain, invited speculation. Some saw the shadow of a lost harbor or a ringed foundation. Others pointed to the known tectonic chaos of the Azores Plateau, where volcanic flows and hydrothermal vents can mimic the shapes of ancient architecture. No artifacts, no inscriptions, no datable material, just sonar echoes and a few minutes of video. Fernandes called for transparency, urging that all raw data be made public for independent analysis. Until then, the concentric signatures remain a riddle. Are they the remnants of a vanished city or the work of nature's own restless hand? For now, the evidence sits in a gray zone, provocative but unresolved, awaiting the next expedition to bring clarity or cast new shadows. On the volcanic island of Santorini, an ancient city lies sealed beneath meters of hardened ash. Akrotiri, once a thriving Bronze Age settlement, was frozen in time by one of the most violent eruptions in human history. Around 1600 BCE, the Thera volcano unleashed a force so powerful that it buried the city almost instantly, preserving streets, frescoes, and even wooden beams in a thick gray blanket. Archaeologists working at Akrotiri have uncovered multi-story buildings with intact staircases, walls still standing, and pottery left where it fell. The suddenness of the disaster is written into the layers of ash, a stratigraphic record that captures a single moment of destruction. Dating the event has become a scientific puzzle of its own. Radiocarbon samples from olive branches trapped beneath the ash, combined with volcanic tephra found as far away as Greenland, have allowed researchers like Sturt Manning to calibrate the eruption to a narrow window between 1627 and 1600 BCE. This precision comes from Bayesian modeling of over 300 radiocarbon dates, cross-checked against the unique chemical signature of Thera's ash. The result is a timeline so tight that it leaves little doubt about when the city was lost. Akrotiri's fate offers a rare benchmark, a real-world example of a civilization erased in a geological instant, yet preserved for millennia. The ash acts as both destroyer and archivist, sealing evidence in place for future discovery. While the scale of Santorini's eruption falls short of Plato's Atlantis, the site remains a touchstone for how sudden catastrophe can bury a city, freeze a culture, and leave behind a silent record awaiting rediscovery. Across the Atlantic basin, the search for Atlantis has played out in grids and data points rather than legends and maps. Since 2019, the General Bathymetric Chart of the Oceans, GEBICO, has stitched together sonar readings from ships, satellites, and autonomous vehicles, producing a global seafloor map, 100-meter resolution. This digital lattice covers the Azores, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and every candidate plateau once imagined as Atlantis' resting place. But when researchers combed through these grids, the pattern was unmistakable. No sunken city, no buried citadel, no trace of monumental walls or harbors. The terrain is volcanic, shaped by basalt flows and tectonic fractures, not by human hands. Remotely operated vehicles have probed the most promising anomalies. In 2021, a University of Lisbon remotely operated vehicle descended to 1,200 meters near a set of concentric features flagged by earlier sonar. The logbook recorded nothing but fractured basalt, pillow lavas, and scattered sediment. No artifacts, no worked stone, no evidence of construction. The same result repeated across dozens of dives, from the Azores to the deep basins west of Madeira. Each video feed showed the raw geology of the ocean floor, silent and empty. The absence of ruins on this scale sets a new threshold for extraordinary claims. If an advanced civilization did once exist in these depths, its physical traces have either vanished beyond recognition or were never there to begin with. The data leave little room for speculation. The Atlantic, as mapped by today's technology, holds no obvious footprints of Atlantis. For every anomaly, the bathymetric synthesis points back to natural forces, volcanism, subsidence, erosion. The search continues, but the evidence so far demands a harder look at what it would take to erase a world so completely. Volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, tectonic collapse, and sea level rise, each has been proposed as the engine behind Atlantis' disappearance. To test these scenarios, geophysicists like Professor Mark Davies have turned to numerical models, stripping away legend to measure what nature can and cannot do. The Thera eruption, one of the most violent in recorded history, reached a volcanic explosivity index of 6 to 7 and expelled around 30 cubic kilometers of magma. The resulting tsunami, reconstructed from Paleote tsunami deposits, reached run-up heights between 30 and 40 meters along Aegean shores. Yet even this force, enough to erase coastal settlements in a matter of hours, could not submerge an island the size Plato described. Subsidence rates offer another boundary. On the Azores Plateau, GPS and INSAR data show vertical movement of 2 to 3 millimeters per year, a pace that, even over 10,000 years, yields only about 30 meters of sinking. That is a far cry from the hundreds or thousands of meters needed to erase a continent. Post-glacial sea level rise, especially during meltwater pulse 1A, roughly 14,600 years ago, lifted global seas by about 20 meters in just a few centuries. Any island less than 50 meters above the waves would have been partially flooded, but a landmass on the scale of Libya and Asia combined would not have vanished. Davies' synthesis draws a hard line. No single event, eruption, tsunami, or tectonic drop can account for the instant disappearance of a continent-sized Atlantis. Even in combination, the numbers fall short. The physics of the Earth's crust and ocean leave little room for the myth's most dramatic claim. What remains is a puzzle. Natural forces can erase a city or reshape a coastline, but the story of Atlantis, as written, exceeds the limits of known geologic processes. The legend's power survives, but the models demand harder evidence, a challenge that now falls to the next generation of ocean explorers. Aboard the research vessel, the search for Atlantis moves from sonar scans to the silent layers of the seafloor itself. Scientists lower a gravity core, a steel cylinder designed to pierce the sediments and return with a vertical sample, untouched by human hands since it settled. Each core is a timeline, a column of mud and mineral that records the story of ocean, volcano, and perhaps civilization. The process is exacting. As the core is retrieved, technicians slice it into sections, noting every change in color, texture, or embedded fragment. Volcanic ash stands out as pale bands, instant markers of catastrophe. Organic-rich layers, sometimes flecked with bits of charcoal or shell, signal moments when life flourished or disaster struck. Stratigraphy, the study of these layers, becomes the language through which the past speaks. To draw a boundary between nature's chaos and possible evidence of culture, labs rely on a dual approach. Radiocarbon dating targets organic material, a piece of shell, a splinter of wood, even ancient algae. Each is measured for the faint trace of radioactive decay, yielding an age in years. For mineral grains, especially quartz, buried in sudden events, optically stimulated luminescence, OSL, offers another clock. By exposing these grains to light in the lab, scientists can determine when they last saw the sun, providing a timestamp for rapid burial. Every layer is cross-checked. A tephra band chemically matched to a known eruption can be dated by both radiocarbon and OSL, testing the reliability of each method. This paired protocol is the gold standard, empirical, repeatable, and open to scrutiny. Only when dates from different techniques converge do researchers dare to draw conclusions about what happened and when. The method leaves little room for wishful thinking. If a civilization vanished beneath the waves, its story should be written in the sequence of mud and ash, locked in the core's silent archive. The tools and tests are impartial. What they reveal, if anything, will separate legend from the physical record. A city vanishes in a single night. Floodwaters rise, the earth shakes, and an empire disappears. This is the vision that has haunted imaginations for 2,000 years. But beneath the drama lies a question that modern science refuses to set aside. What would it actually take to prove that Atlantis was real? Speculative reconstructions, always labeled and always watermarked, fill the gap between what is hoped for and what is known. Artists render ringed harbors swallowed by black waves. Digital models spin through cycles of collapse, and headlines promise the lost city found. Yet each new claim faces a bar set not by storytelling, but by evidence. Experts return again and again to a simple checklist, 3 points that separate legend from history. First, stratigraphic context. Any structure or artifact must be found in place, sealed in the layers of sediment, not drifting or disturbed. Second, absolute dating. Radiocarbon or luminescence tests must fix the age of the material to the right window before the end of the last ice age, or at least before the earliest known civilizations. Third, peer-reviewed publication. The data, the site, and every interpretation must be open to independent scrutiny, not just circulated in private or online forums. A watermark hovers over each dramatized scene, reading speculative reconstruction. The checklist appears one item at a time: stratigraphic context, absolute dating, peer review, reminding viewers that the standard is not imagination, but verification. For all the emotion the Atlantis story stirs, the path to history runs through method. Only when a site meets these criteria, layer by layer and test by test, can the myth cross the threshold into fact. Until then, the legend remains suspended between what science demands and what the human mind longs to believe. The ocean still guards its oldest secrets. With every sonar sweep and satellite image, the line between myth and memory grows thinner. Today's technology exposes ancient scars beneath the waves, evidence that entire worlds can vanish and still shape our imagination. As new data emerges, the case remains open. Some mysteries aren't lost, they're waiting to be found. Share your theory below.